As the first lands of the New World to be discovered, and as a lair for the pirates and buccaneers of legend, the Bahamas have always attracted sailors and adventurers. This Caribbean archipelago, with 700 coral islands and islets, was then a real haven of peace for sailors after the trials of crossing the North Atlantic. Fed by the warm currents of the Gulf Stream, their shallow waters offer today's travelers a crystal clear sea teeming with life, making the Bahamas one of the most sought-after destinations for exploring the ocean depths. Andros is the largest and wildest island of the Bahamas. Close to a deep ocean rift, its beaches of white sand are protected by the third largest coral barrier reef in the world, the largest in the Northern Hemisphere. At the beginning of the 1960s, a Canadian who was passionate about diving, named Dick Burch, decided to settle on this then isolated island. Although the sport was little known at the time, he established the first diving centre in the Caribbean. Wanting to protect this environment that fascinated him, Dick Burch created a small family-run facility which still maintains the principles of its founder.
My name is Jeff Burch, and I am the eldest son of the Burch clan. As far as Small Hope, we're, as far as I know, the oldest resort that has been built and run by the same family dedicated to diving. But what's more important is our philosophy of diving. Diving is a sport, it's not a profession. When my father first started in 1960, what he believed was everybody in the world can dive, and it was his responsibility to ensure that they came here to Andros and saw the third largest barrier reef in the world. This philosophy continues today. Time stops in the mind when you're diving. No problem enters your mind. You are totally inundated with what you see and what you feel.
From the very start, the experience offered by Small Hope on the Coral Barrier Reef attracted many enthusiasts and explorers. Like Captain Cousteau, who came here and contributed to the international reputation of the Bahamas as an unmissable destination for all lovers of the ocean depths.
Being in business here at Small Hope for 50 years started with the first generation. And the first generation was my father and my mother, who were living in Canada. And he was quite an adventurer, obviously, to come to this island that had no development whatsoever. My father was written in, first of all, in 1962. He had the deepest record for diving. So he was quite an adventurer. He's jumped out of airplanes. He's crashed 3 planes. Not that he was a crazy man, but he was a type of person that lived life. And that's why we ended up here. One of the biggest things that has affected us, and he had 7 children between 3 wives, was a concern for the natural environment. And from day one when he came here, he drilled into us as kids that you have to care about the community, you have to care about the environment.
Over the years, Jeff Burch has stayed faithful to the legacy of his father, a humanist and trailblazing ecologist, and putting his roots before desires for expansion. The unusual story of this family is now entwined with the fate of the island, thanks to the figure of Peter Douglas, Jeff Burch's adopted brother and an important personality in environmental politics in Andros.
I became a part of the Burch family in the 1970s, and Dick became like a father figure in my life, and Small Hope became my home. I grew up under Dick's philosophy, and one of the wonderful things about Dick's philosophy growing up here at Small Hope Bay was the fact that he always said, you know, do not disturb nature more than you have to. I later on got into politics, and one of my main drive when I got into local politics was to protect some of this beautiful natural environment that Andros have. One of my main jobs right now is working with the Ministry of Tourism in our country, is trying to develop a sustainable tourism model for some of our islands. And Andros is going to be one of those main islands where we develop a sustainable tourism model. Small Hope Bay is perfect for what a sustainable tourism model is. The same thing with fishing. We don't want to do no commercial fishing in certain areas. We don't want no netting, no trapping, and very sustainable fishing methods. And all of these sort of methods were discussed and be trained to local stakeholders so that they could use these methods, appreciate the end results of these methods, and see that there's always a certain amount that you can take out. So you have a constant income and you have a constant supply instead of one time you harvest heavy and then wait for 10 years for it to all come back.
Victims of intensive fishing in other areas of the Bahamas, conchas and spiny lobsters are still plentiful in the reefs of Andros, where traditional fishing is still practiced. This generous sea that feeds man has close connections to the island. Here, the water and the land form a complex network, and the marine rivers that crisscross Andros shape the landscape. The mangroves and rainwater lakes, of which there are many on the island, create a series of varied and preserved ecosystems which make Andros so rich and unique. The endemic vegetation, mainly dominated by Caribbean pine forests, has adapted to the rocky, infertile soil which is everywhere in the Bahamas. These vast forests, where animals are rare, play a special role on Andros and are protected within the national parks, whose establishment owes much to the commitment of Peter Douglas.
If you look around and you see the pine forest here, this is part of the largest rockland pine forest left in the world. The pine forest is very important to the fresh water lands here in Andros. It keeps the water lands up to the surface, keeping the fresh water that is very vital to Andros and the Bahamas close to the surface. So the pine forest plays a very important role. It keeps the water lands in, but also it helps create the rain to put the water back. So it's a perfect balanced system.
Formed from porous coral limestone, Andros is in fact a real sponge. The ocean, which penetrates the many underground passages, comes to meet the fresh water which is kept on the surface by the vegetation. This is responsible for a surprising geological phenomenon: blue holes.
We're here at Captain Bill's Blue Hole, and blue holes are very special to Andros. These blue holes were formed during the Ice Age, when Andros was way above sea level, about 400 feet, as a big limestone plateau. And as the ice cap melts, you have the change in the pH and the acidity of the water. It found little cracks within this big limestone plateau, and it just started to work away. And when the rise and fall of the tide, the water moved up and down in a circular pattern, and we were very lucky to get these big circular blue holes on land.
These startling formations offer experienced divers the opportunity for a spectacular dive into the inner recesses of the island. On land or under the sea, there are no fewer than 200 blue holes on Andros, which have long fascinated men and inspired many legends. Feared by the island's natives, they attract explorers who seek to unravel their mysteries. In the dark depths, there is no animal life. But the bacteria present in the sediment mean that the soil is alive, and they create layers of hydrogen sulfide, which can look quite mystical. In these submerged labyrinths, stalactites prove that once the underground network at the origin of the blue holes was above ground. Rich in diversity and unspoilt nature, the largest island in the Bahamas is not greatly visited, and exploring Andros shows us tourism on a human scale. In the northwest of the archipelago, the small island of Bimini is still famous for the big fish that Hemingway used to fish for in the warm currents of the Gulf Stream. A lover of big game fishing, the writer stayed there often and was inspired to write The Old Man and the Sea. Bimini lies barely 80 kilometers from the coast of Florida. It was an ideal location for Al Capone's lieutenants, who used the island as a base for alcohol trafficking during Prohibition. After just an hour's boat ride, Miami residents today come to take advantage of the island's slow pace. Away from the marina and the houses on stilts is Shark Lab, a world-renowned laboratory for the study of sharks. Like the students who come from all over the world to participate in research on the marine predator, Sean Williams isn't in Bimini by chance.
I was just fascinated for some unknown reason, just completely fascinated with sharks since I was like 3 or 4 years old. I can, still remember the first book I ever had with sharks. I don't remember the title, but I can remember it was bull sharks swimming in a river, just a picture of them. Just completely fascinated, so that's certainly the main reason why I'm here.
A doctor of marine biology at Miami University, Sam Gruber founded Shark Lab about 20 years ago.
Here we go.
For Doc, as his students call him, the best way to understand the animal is to observe it directly in its natural environment.
When you do it the first time, even me as a shark fanatic, the first time you're out there and you're about to jump in the water with those Caribbean reef sharks, I think a lot of people are a little bit hesitant. You know, they're sharks. And you start to think, do I really want to jump off this boat? When you jump in, then your whole world changes in terms of your views on sharks. You realize they're not, bloodthirsty predators out to eat you. And they're beautiful, they're magnificent animals, and it's incredible. It's an incredible experience.
While we do study these sharks, what we want to do is bring our students who have never really seen a shark into the water with them so that they get an immediate feeling. The question is it dangerous to dive with sharks? And this depends on what you mean by dangerous. If you look at the record of the millions of people that have been diving with sharks, you find that very few have been actually bitten or hurt by sharks. When I began this research back in the 1970s, 60s actually, very little was known about sharks. And as a marine biologist, I was wondering about the role that the shark plays in controlling the ecosystems. And it turns out that they do play a terrific role in keeping biodiversity intact. So we didn't know anything about that before we started here. And this has been a tremendous biological living laboratory for studying sharks right here at this little island of Bimini. This is a typical lemon shark nursery habitat where mangroves, seagrass, a lot of snappers, there's a lot of fish in the water here. It's a little bit cold now and it's a little early for the babies, so we won't see a lot, but you can see a lot of fish in the water along the mangrove route. What is that? What is this right here, a stingray? Yep, big stingray right here, and got a remora on its head. The lemon shark is the top predator in this particular red mangrove ecosystem here at Bimini. Mangroves play more than the role of supporting a nursery, the role of catching sunlight, dropping their leaves, and starting a food chain. First, their roots catch sediments, and they actually make land. But more important than that, these mangroves reduce the energy of the wave in hurricanes and tsunamis. They protect the land. And if you take out those mangroves, you have taken out a protective barrier for your land. It's a big mistake.
Unfortunately, over the last 50 years, half of the mangroves on our planet have been lost. In Bimini, as elsewhere, this precious ecosystem has been under attack from developers.
They thought, oh, mangrove swamps, it smells, the bugs, we're not going to do it. Now they've learned how to rip them out, fill them, kill all the bugs, and build hotels. Too bad. Not a good plan. All right, tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, just a second.
The research led by Dr. Gruber and his team has led to better knowledge of the shark's behaviour in general and has contributed in part to changing the perceptions the general public used to have a few years ago.
Oh, we got something. Come on, let's go. Okay, listen, right up.
Young lemon sharks are relatively easy to study as they aren't very aggressive. As adults, they can grow to 3.5 meters, which makes studying them a little more difficult.
We love sharks because we know that they're the ones that keep the ocean stable, and they've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of millions of years. They're extremely important for ocean ecology.
Looks good.
It's a male, I think. I think I saw it was a male. Yeah, it's a male. Okay.
I don't think I could live away from the ocean. I really don't need a lot of possessions to be here. My most valuable thing here for me, my mask, fins, and snorkel, because I'm a true water person. I love to be in the water as much as I can, and you know, that's all I really need.
Former Shark Lab workers Katie Grudecki and Grant Johnson aren't ready to leave the island. Wanting to live out their passion on a daily basis, they now offer visitors the chance to explore the ocean of Bimini with them.
That's actually one of the best part of our jobs, is taking people out who have never experienced it before. Even when we just take them out to some of the beautiful reefs on Bimini and they get to snorkel for the first time, they're so excited to get in the water, and the smallest reef fish and stingrays and everything is just excitement for them, and we love it.
Katie and Grant show us the wreck of Sapona, a favourite diving spot in Bimini. With its hold full of rum and whiskey, the ship was used as a floating warehouse during Prohibition. In 1926, a hurricane was too strong for it, and when it sank, the unlucky owner lost both his ship and its cargo. Ironically, the American Air Force used the Sapona as a practice bombing target in the Second World War. The wreck, now reclaimed by nature, is a popular site with divers today. This artificial reef attracts many species of fish, which find in it abundant food supplies and shelter from the waves. Whether you're an expert or a beginner, diving in the clear, shallow water of the Bahamas allows you to explore a protected world and sometimes to see unexpected things.
Swimming with dolphins is definitely one of the top experiences you can have when you come to Bimini. They actually want to be around you and they want to play with you, and once you swim with the Atlantic spotted dolphins and interact with them, you'll want to do it over and over again. You can't get enough of it.
By taking care of the ocean that surrounds them, the inhabitants of the Bahamas have been able to keep their underwater riches safe.